right. I bet we could probably kick things off. So officially welcome. Thank you for attending and for watching this recording. This is the second of our gift of open source contribution webinars with Amy June. Today we are going to be talking about Issue Queue 101. Like I said, this is the second of the webinars. We met earlier today to talk about non-code contributions for Drupal. All of the recordings for these webinars will be available through the Pantheon community forum and probably documentation in the future as well. So we will have these all available if you happen to miss one along the line. With that, Amy June, you want to kick us off?
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the issue queue, and there is a workshop on the 15th about how to create an issue and how to triage issues. So today, what I want to do is that I have a real short slide deck about like just kind of looking at it, getting a feel from like 1,000 feet up. But mostly I want to do a demo where we kind of bumper car through a lot of the issue queue, because we were chatting a little bit before the workshop about how sometimes finding something to work on can be the most difficult part of giving back. In the issue queue, most people think, or a lot of people think, it has to do with code, and it doesn't necessarily. And we'll go over this in some of the demo too, is a lot of our initiatives and projects and non-code based community efforts have issue queues that we track our issues in, much like an Asana board or a Trello board. So those are definitely non-code contributions. So we'll look at like all the different looks and feels of the issue queue as we go, and with a little bit of a reminder that on the 15th, we'll do a deeper dive into like how to create an issue and how to triage things. And we might talk about that a little bit today. But again, if we don't necessarily, if you're not find what you're looking for, come back on the 15th and you might find it there. Like Katie said, my name is Amy June. I work with Canopy Studios. We're a partner with Pantheon. I am a QA engineer and an open source community ambassador. I get paid to give back to Drupal. So I'm very excited to be part of this Pantheon gift of open source. I do work in the community. Some of the highlights like I like to mention is I love traveling and I love meeting new people. So a natural extension of that is to be an event organizer and a volunteer at most of the places I go to. I work with the community working group, the CWG, on their community health team, leading some initiatives. I am an accessibility advocate because I'm a hospice nurse by trade. I help organize a talk, Ally Talks, A11Y Talks, where we meet once a month and talk about all things accessibility. And this project is not Drupal based necessarily, but it's CMS agnostic, but we have a community issue queue, and maybe we can look at that as an example of a community project queue. And then I'm also a core mentor for Drupal contributions. I teach workshops like these throughout the year at meetups and camps and at DrupalCon. And Pantheon, I'm a Pantheon hero, and I love this program. And I do want to say that throughout the year, Pantheon gives folks opportunities and like little projects that you can work on and help the community grow. So not only are you a Pantheon hero, but you help give back to the open source community by some of the projects that they highlight in there. And why give back to open source? And I'm just going to read this slide deck for ADA purposes. So contributing makes you feel good. It feels good to give back to a project that you get for free. Giving back to open source, not only with code, but with community projects and speaking and all that kind of stuff. We really help move the Drupal project forward and have it be more refined and closer to perfection. The more you contribute, the more street cred you have. It looks really good on a resume when you give back to open source projects. It's altruistic, and the more you contribute, the more you learn. And there's a little bit of a guilt factor. I like to mention that is if you depend on open source software, like you download it for free and you don't have to pay for it, it feels like if you depend on it, then open source depends on you too. you get what you give and then you get some back, you know, and contributing really makes you feel more integrated in the Drupal community. Okay, so what are we going to talk about right now? Like I said, it's just going to be brief slides and then go into like a more pragmatic demo, but I want to take a look at a Drupal.org profile. And this is going to help us because they have dashboards on there that are kind of like a launching or a diving board into the issue queue. It's a place where you can go and kind of gather your thoughts. We're going to take a look at the 1,000-foot view of the issue queue. We're going to talk about what core Drupal is versus contributed Drupal, because there is a difference, and there is a difference in the issue queue. And then we'll take a look at how to search the issue queue using not only like the default search components, but the advanced search components that are offered in the queue. And before the demo, I want to talk about etiquette in the issue queue. It's more than just being nice and respectful. So we'll go over some of the do's and the don'ts for etiquette. So I don't like to put anyone on the spot, so I'm just used my Drupal.org profile as a little image here, and we'll look at it closer when we stop the screen share. But you can see that it's like a Drupal resume. You know, there's useful tabs across the top. You can see, you know, my buttons will look different than your buttons because if you have different privileges or different things going on, you know, your view looks a little different. But there's useful tabs, you know, there's the dashboard and there's quick links on there. You know, you can see, you know, who you work for, how long you've been on there. And this is just a screenshot, but if you scroll down, you know, you can see what projects people work on, you know, what events they've gone to, things like that. So core versus contrib, let's, you know, like really dissect that part of the issue queue. Drupal.org is where most of the code that makes Drupal sites work, including the core Drupal projects. All Drupal websites run on a version of core. What makes each website different and unique are the additional things that people attach to it, how they extend it. And all of those extensions are called contrib, or contributed modules, themes, and distributions. You can pick and choose from a wide array of these contributed modules, and they really add functionality to your site. And they can range from contributed themes that change your site's appearance. And again, these are add-on modules and they're called contrib because they're contributed by members of the Drupal community. And unlike some of the other CMSs we might work with, all of these extensions are open source and free of charge. And that's what makes Drupal stand out from a lot of these communities. Is extending Drupal and giving back is all free. But again, it goes back to if you depend on Drupal, it depends on you. So if you're using open source contributed modules, and you find a bug, it's only nice, you know, to give back and fix that bug, or at least report the problem. So distributions provide site features and functions for a specific type of site, and you download it as a single download, and it has predefined configurations and things like that. And there's contributed themes, and there are a set of files that define the look and feel of your website. And then you might hear a lot about modules, and to translate it into other open source projects, they might be called plugins or extensions in other platforms. And a module is basically a set of PHP or CSS or JavaScript files that extend the functionality of your website. So this is an image of the 1,000-foot view of the issue queue. You can see across the top in those blue tabs that you can see Drupal core, distributions, modules, and themes. And that's how you get to all like a central documentation and hub for those projects. And what this issue queue is it's all of them put together. This isn't just core. You can see a little bit down in the picture that there's a project, and you can see that they belong to different things. You can see that there's the picture module, the composer deploy module, and then there's 2 issues for Drupal core. So this is the issue queue of everything. And we'll look at it a little bit heavier. So we'll look at all of these things more in the demo, but there's a few ways that you can find things in the issue queue. You can search by keywords. You can search by the status of an issue. And the next slide is going to talk about all the different parts of the life cycle of a status. You can search by priority. You know, is it a minor bug? Is it a critical bug? Is it, you know, high priority? You can search by category. You know, is it user interface? Is it JavaScript? You can search by version, like if you're better at Drupal 7 than Drupal 8, you can look for a specific version of Drupal, or even modules. You know, say you're working on an older module and you find a bug, you can search by the version of that module. And then the component too, you know, and as we look at the issue queue, we'll define these a little bit more. So here's a list of things for status. Status is really important because depending on your level of expertise or your skill set, you might want to stay away from different things. You know, you might not be ready to create a patch, or you might not be ready to review a patch. So knowing where the issue is in that workflow is important. So active status means that there is an issue. It's basically open and nothing's been done with it yet. As people work through issues, they change the status. So it could be needs work. That means someone has actively been working on it, but it's not quite done yet. Or say they've added a patch, but the patch isn't quite ready to go. They would mark it needs work for the next person, so they would know that it would need work. Needs review, that's when a patch has been submitted and they would like someone to review that for them, or the idea or the project is complete and they just want a second set of eyes on there. And needs review is a great place to start as a new contributor. It kind of gets you acquainted a little bit more, and there's a little bit less involved with, you know, not having to navigate patching and things like that. Once an issue has been reviewed and tested and people are solid with it, the status will move into reviewed and tested by the community. And that really allows the maintainers or the contributors to the project to know that it's ready for them to look at. Patch to be ported. There's a patch up there, but someone wants to patch it to Drupal 7. So it's been submitted to Drupal 8, but now they want to backport it. The issue's marked fixed. That means it's ready to go. It's done. People have been attributed. It's finished. Sometimes there's not enough information to work on something in the issue queue. And so someone will make a comment and then they'll change the status to postponed. And there's a couple different varieties of this status. But it could be postponed because the maintainer needs more information. It could be postponed because another issue that is relevant to it needs more work. And then after the life cycle and everything happens, maintainers can move that issue to closed. And that really indicates to people that there's no more work to be done on that. It doesn't blow away the issue. It's still there because it's important. Like say you have a bug and you search the queue, you can look and see how other people are fixing that issue. You know, maybe someone else had a different patch that might work better than the one that was selected to be committed. And then as issues are marked fixed after 2 weeks of inactivity, they automatically close. And this is an image of using advanced search with the novice tag. I'm going to go back a couple slides. You can see up here under the heading issues for all projects, there's a button, a link for create new issue, and then there's a button for advanced search as well. So we'll go back to that advanced search slide. So what this does is it adds a couple more components to the search boxes for you that kind of like really, you know, the hone in what you want to work on. So the advanced search adds 4 fields. It adds an assign to field, like say you're working on a project with someone and they mentioned that that it was assigned to them, but you can't remember the issue. You can type in their profile name and it'll show all the issues that are assigned to them. Same thing with submitted by. You know that your coworker submitted an issue yesterday, but you can't remember the issue. You type in their username. You can also refine your search to who's following it. Like say you were in a BOF of birds of a feather discussion and they're talking about an issue, but again, you can't remember quite what it was. You can search by who's following it. And issue tags, I think, is the most dynamic part. You can search the queue by issue tags. Drupal has already defined tags out there. And we'll talk about this when we create the issue in the workshop on the 15th. There's almost every issue tag that you can think of. Say you're into accessibility and you want to look for issues that are accessibility. You type in accessibility and it'll come up with all of those. Say you're working in a sprint or for the Gift of Open Source project and they've created a tag for all of the issues that we're working on this month in December, which I don't think we've created an issue tag yet, but we might just do that pretty soon. You would type in, GOOS, and you would find all of the issues that all the folks that are participating in this program have worked on. And those tags for camps are really great because at the end of a camp, organizers can look and see what folks were interested in, what people were contributing to. So issue queue etiquette. And I really like to talk about this because we are a global community. And as you know, not everyone reads all of the documentation. There's a lot of documentation out there. So I just like, as a novice, as a beginner to the issue queue, just want to highlight some of the do's and don'ts for the issue queue. Do try to solve the problem before creating an issue. Make sure that it really is a bug first. It's okay that if you don't know that it's a bug for sure, and you can report it. But if you can try to solve the problem yourself, that's always advantageous. Do read and reread and read again any relevant documentation before creating an issue, because say you find a composer-based issue and you go into the documentation, you might find the fix and be able to create that patch yourself. And, it goes back to that trying to solve the problem yourself. Maybe you're following a step wrong. So sometimes taking a break and coming back and rereading documentation helps with that. Make sure you download the latest development version and see if the issue has already been fixed. Because a lot of times we're using older versions of, especially of contributed modules, and maintainers don't always backport things. So see if the latest development version has the same bug. And try to get help from the community in other ways before the issue queue, going on Drupal Stack Exchange or asking internally at work or going into some of your favorite Drupal partner platforms and seeing if someone else has some answers. I know I utilize the Pantheon community Slack channel a lot. I don't necessarily post issues, but I'm very interested in how people are using the product, and you can see some of the questions that are posed and then how some of the people approach the solutions. And then make sure you search the issue queue and see if the issue already exists. Maybe the issue is already there and people are having similar issues to you. If you find a similar issue, consider whether or not your issue is really the same or if you should create a new issue. We don't want to be redundant and reinvent the wheel. If the issue is closed, very few people will see the post, and some project maintainers may delete posts and see them as noisy, but always check the status and avoid posting in closed issues. If the issue is open and you have more details that you could help get the bug resolved or understood, confirming that the bug is still relevant and still open is really helpful to maintainers. Making sure that you provide descriptions of the problems or bugs you're having using a summary template, and we'll look at that. The more details people have, the better it is and the easier it is for them to solve that problem. For example, what version of Drupal are you using? Does the bug only happen in Firefox or does it happen in Safari as well? What actions, what steps did you take to create that bug? Because not everyone else uses the software the same as you. And if the error happened because of some code snippet, make sure you can post that code snippet as well. An important one is to be grateful. talented, hardworking people are giving you their time. And it's free to express gratitude. And it really means a lot to people, you know. They spent time out of their day to help you with the bug. So, you know, just having someone say thank you can really be a highlight of their day. And if you're a project maintainer, making sure you provide credits for the people that help you as well as a sign of gratitude. And then come back and report to the community if a solution worked for you. It goes back to that redundancy. You know, say you've created an issue and you posted it, and then you found a solution months later. Go back and add that solution to the issue for others who might have that same thing. Okay, so let's go over some of the don'ts of the issue queue. This is a big one. Don't report a security issue in the regular issue queue because it's a security issue. You don't want everyone on the planet being able to search the, you know, the issue, a security problem. So there's certain protocols and procedures for reporting a security. Be specific. Don't just say, you know, XYZ doesn't work, right? You want to elaborate and add details so the community, so they have a better chance of helping you out, you know, making sure that your title is short and succinct. That way, when people search for the issue, they can find it. And again, this is something we'll go over when we create an issue in a couple of weeks. Going back to that do, you know, don't be ungrateful. You know, it can be frustrating when something doesn't work as you wanted it to, but don't take it out on someone else in the issue queue. You know, don't let your bad day and frustration, you know, ooze into your comments. Don't hijack issues by posting your question and not. You want to make sure that it's logical to create a new issue, you know, and you don't want to take over someone else's issue on a topic that's irrelevant. You know, don't post a question, then not follow it up with responses. Again, go back and post your findings. And one thing to think about when you're a beginner is not to take things personally. Most people will be helpful, but some maintainers might feel overworked or harassed. So sometimes, you know, emotions can escalate. So try not to be take things personally. And on those same notes, you know, avoiding being snappy yourself. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Everyone was a beginner once. Admitting that you're a beginner is a great first step. People are, I hate to say this, more apt to help you and understand where you're coming from when you disclose that you're a beginner. There's a choice to assign yourself an issue in the issue queue. Don't assign yourself if you're not going to actively work on the project, because that kind of hijacks it, because people respect that. They see that you've assigned yourself an issue and they know that you're working on it, and avoids that redundancy. When we're adding tags, don't add random tags because they do autocomplete. Again, all of the tags that exist in Drupal are probably enough for everyone. Don't mark an issue RTBC, that's that reviewed and tested by the community, if you haven't actually done all the tests. Checking to see if the patch applies is great, but if you didn't check the code, be specific with that and don't mark it to RDBC. You can say, the patch applied, but I don't know this part of the code, and that helps a little bit, but don't, you know, change the status. And then don't upload screenshots of a patch that apply. That kind of clogs the system. People will know that the patch applies. For screenshots, you want to make sure you keep it to like UI things and things that you can see on the client facing side. And then as a person who's not a maintainer, you want to make sure that you don't change the status of an issue from closed to fixed, because as I explained earlier, that fixed tag will automatically close as fixed and be removed from that list of open issues after 14 days. So this next one for issue queue etiquette is attributions and credits. When you're a maintainer of a project hosted on Drupal.org, you control the project page and the contents of that repository. It's important to observe that etiquette regarding attributions, credits, and the proper use of the credit system. And this might not be something that as a novice to the issue queue that you'll experience, but I want to talk about it because it gives you some perspective of the other side, the maintainer side of it. As a maintainer, when you take over a project, you don't want to remove the names of previous contributors to the project from any of the code in the files, from the project page, because it's longevity. You want to give those credits where credits are due. If you attribute yourself, do also add attributions for previous maintainers that have contributed to the project, again, back to that legacy stuff. And then when you mark an issue as fixed, make sure that you give credit to people who actually helped resolve the issue. And there's a whole lot of information that you can look up on granting issues to issue contributors. And saying this, say you work on an issue internally and you post a patch, like I'll post a patch, but say Jim and Sean and Cindy helped me work on that patch. I'm going to mention that in the issue queue that these people helped me with that patch. That way, when credits are given, I make sure that I include all of the people that helped me out on that project. And then we want to make sure that we don't abuse the credit system. We don't want to game the system because it does show up on our profiles. Every issue you have. And so some people might take advantage of that and create like really small issues just to get credits and inflate their profile. So you just want to make sure that you don't duplicate small changes, like coding standard fixes that if there are lots of small changes, keep it in one issue rather than creating a single issue for each one of them. And then now it's tour time. So I'll stop sharing this part of my screen and we'll open up the issue queue. But this is a good time to ask some like broader questions, but they might get answered in the demo. And then before I sign off, I wanted to say thank you and that you can find me at Volkswagen Chick across all of the medias. And let's see if I can. Okay, so what I want to do is sort of this big tour about what even the issue queue is. And I want to start, like I said, with that Drupal.org profile. Now, if you don't have a Drupal.org profile, I do recommend that you sign up for one. And again, not to put anyone on the spot, I just want to look at mine. That way, it's kind of like a privacy thing or whatever. But you can see, I have my name, I have a username. And this username is reflected up here in the URL for other people. On your own page, it's going to be /user. But for other people, if I wanted to look up, Jim Birch's thing, it would be drupal.org/u/ and then his username that's here in the parentheses. And my dashboard might look different from yours because I have some elevated privileges and I work differently in the issue queue than other folks. But before I talk about these tabs across the top, I want to talk about the page itself and talk about how it's your Drupal resume. You can link to your social profiles, you can link to your GitHub, you can link to your personal website, which might be a brochure page with your resume. Here I attribute who I work with. You can choose whether or not to attribute companies you used to work for. There's a new section down here for pronouns, which is sort of nice. So make sure that if this information is available, that you're respectful of that for folks. There's a bio section here. I talk a little bit about where I am, who I come from, different things that happen. There's this history section where it shows how long I've been on Drupal.org. Documentation, we're going to have a workshop on documentation in a couple weeks, but when you contribute to documentation pages outside of the issue queue, it's attributed on your profile as well. And again, back to documentation, I maintain and help with some documentation guides, and they're listed here. You can highlight some of the events you do. Adding your mentors is important, kind of attributing who's helped you along the way. And then down here at the bottom is all of the issues that you've worked on for the past year. And you can see I've worked on a number of different things. I work in the webmasters queue confirming new users, no code involved. I help with the documentation initiative. I help with camps, you know, going back to those non-code contributions, you know, there's that ally talks I help with. So this first section is like non-code contributions that you've done. And then if you scroll to the bottom, there's a section for projects where there's actually code that you committed. And these are like more the non-code repositories. So I submitted a patch to all of these projects. So that's kind of like that high level view of your Drupal resume. But what I really like, and this is why I want to highlight the profile page, is it has all of these useful tabs across the top that I don't have to bookmark. I don't have to keep track of. So if I have an extra hour on Friday or an extra 15 minutes on Tuesday, I can quickly just hit any of these tabs and find different things that I worked on. This dashboard tab, you can edit this and make it your own experience. Drupal.org takes a while to load sometimes. So we're going to look at this dashboard because this is my diving point for the issue queue. I'm going to let it load. And this dashboard is fully customizable. You can add blocks. So these are the blocks I like. I help with security releases at work. So I have this block that gives all the security releases, which is kind of nice. There's the blog section on Drupal.org, Drupal Planet. So you can come here and you can have all of the latest, you know, it aggregates it for you right here. Some of the biggest Drupal news, the highlights. You know, I have the block that highlights all of the issues I have personally posted. Here's a block that has all of the issues where I have made posts, because there's difference. There's issues that you've created and issues that you have posted on. And then up here, there's this contributor links block. I recommend that everyone has this on this page because it has some predefined links for you where they've predefined some of those advanced search fields for you. So you can select this and it will pull up all of the novice issues in the queue. You can, you know, you can read all of these different things, you know, your issues, pending bugs. And then on this side, it's a block specifically for Drupal core. Now, as a new contributor, I don't want to dissuade people from working on core, but I do want to say it's a little bit easier to get started in the contrib space. It's less intimidating. There's less back and forth. There's less discussion based because core is kind of a big deal. There's a lot of discussion that happens. And as a new contributor, sometimes it's difficult to see that you've posted an issue or helped out, but it doesn't move anywhere for a few years. Where the contributed space, things move a little bit quicker. And as a beginner, it gives you that sense of empowerment, seeing that some of the things that you've worked on are actively, you know, getting cycled through. So with saying that, I'm going to open this novice field here, this link. And what this does is it opens up the issue queue that we saw a picture of, but it also opens it up with the advanced search view. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that advanced search view off so we can look at the difference between the two issue queues. So Drupal.org/project/issues is all of the issues that are not closed, including Drupal core and contributed projects. So you can see here, it looks a little bit different. There's not as many things to choose from, but you can see there's the project. So this is the name of the project. This is that title, you know, what's the bug, what's going on in the issue queue. Here's that status. And it's color coded for people that can see the color codes, but, you know, also says, you know, what it is, but it makes it easy to kind of find what issues, like I said, like sometimes reviewing an issue would be easier than uploading a patch. So sometimes, you know, having this highlighted that it needs review is a good way to kind of refine that search for you. You can see how old the issue is. You know, this issue is 4 years old. As a beginner, maybe that might not be the greatest or the best one to work on. This replies is sort of nice because as a novice to the issue queue, I do recommend that beginners stay away from issues that have more than 30 comments or so. because maybe they've changed status a bunch of times, or there's some discussion on the roadmap, and it might not, get fixed in a timely manner. So sticking with issues that have, say 6 issues or 6 comments, 3 comments is a little bit better. And then you can see when it was worked on last. And by default, this is the view you get. You can see that this issue was just created and just updated last a minute ago. But now I want to look at that advanced search thing. So without advanced search, you can see we can, search for a keyword. We can search by the project, and these are autocomplete. So say we want to look for meta tag, you would just let that, autocomplete. You can search by, you only want projects that needs review. You only want to work on ones that are critical because you feel like that will have the most impact for you. And then there's that category key as well. But this advanced search is very powerful because with advanced search, when we open that up, it gives us those other options that I talked about. It gives us the category. Do you want to just work on things that are tasks? Do you want to work on bugs? Do you want to work on support? Or do you want to look at roadmaps? Again, back to, I know that, Jim worked on, submitted something last week, but I can't remember. I can select him. I can, everything auto-populates, which is super nice, So that's a great way to search the queue. But the most powerful thing is this issue tags. You can have a couple of them in there, but say your specialty is accessibility. You want to work on an accessibility issue. So you would just, start to type accessibility. I only want to work on issues that needs work. I don't care the priority, I don't care about this stuff, but I go and I hit search. And now the only issues in here are going to be for accessibility that are in the needs review. So that's super helpful for really defining, like finding an issue you want to work on. So we're going to back up a little bit and we're going to, or go forward. I don't know which way to put it. We're going to look at an issue now and kind of see all the components of an issue. So it doesn't matter what we look at. We'll just look at a Drupal core issue. So here, there's 2 different ways that you can get to the issue. They're linked, and I just select the link. So these are all issues for Drupal core. I'm going to just select one at random because why not? And this gives us this little overview. Okay, so, this isn't a novice issue, but we're just looking at what's involved in an issue. You've got a title that's very short and succinct. That way people can, search by the title if they want to. They've used a template to give you all the relevant information. Like if you're a project manager, or you work on tickets and, steps to replicate and things like that. The issue queue template mirrors tickets that we work on in our agency workflows. Someone's created a problem, they define the steps. There are steps to reproduce. Say there's a few steps to reproduce. Just be very, how you would write out how to write a peanut butter or how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's just those same steps. Get out the bread, open up the jar. And then as people worked on this, you can see that they've scratched out some of the remaining tasks. What happens to the user interface? This isn't always appropriate for all of the issues, So that's sort of that 1,000-foot view of the issue queue. This is the summary. And if you scroll down, you can see all the different comments that were made. Tim made a comment here. They go in numerical order. Here is the place where you would add a comment to yourself. Sometimes this issue data might be open and closed. So if you don't see something, it could be that it's closed. So just be aware that these little carrots mean that there's more metadata behind there. And you can see that this is the issue itself. Like say it needs a little bit of triage, it's not quite right. You would change some of this metadata. You would make a comment here, pretty straightforward. You make your comment, say you've updated the patch. You would say, yeah, update the patch. Here under status, you can see all those statuses we went through. This is where you change it, and upon save, it changes the color code of everything. You know, there's a couple more definitions of what closed and postponed mean, you know, that I didn't highlight, but you can see there's all these different things. Here's that, you know, we'll just kind of do all these drop downs and kind of see what all this stuff means. The category, you know, back to, is it a bug? Did you get a white screen of death? You know, is it just a task like fixing a typo or, you know, changing a user interface component? Are you asking for something new? That's a feature request. A support request would be you're looking for support on an older version. And then a plan would be like, hey, I'm a maintainer of this project and here's the roadmap for us. So as a contributor, you don't always use all this metadata, but knowing what it is kind of important. You know, there's that priority. Most of the time, you know, lots of people like just leave it as normal, but say you're just reporting like a typo. I would drop that down to minor because nothing's broken, you know, and then there's that critical, like, do you get the white screen of death? The version is important, you know, as we move forward, you know, most of the time we want to work on those latest development versions. And this is going to the code part of the issue queue. In the component, this changes per project. This is core, but you can see there's all these different components of core. So that helps when you're refining the search, like say you want to work specifically on the help module. And here's that assigned. Yours is going to look different. It's going to say unassigned and then your name probably. Now this is a core issue. Even if I knew what I was doing and completely sure that I was going to work on this next, basic etiquette for core is you don't assign issues to yourself. That's more for maintainers. But if you're in a contributed project and you know you're going to work on it right then, right there, or you're the project manager of the task, feel free to assign it to yourself. And then here's that tag section, you know, where there's that autofill. So make sure that you just autofill. And then here in the issue queue, you can attribute. This is more for data finding for Drupal.org. Like when Dries gives the state of the Dries note, this provides them with some metadata about who's contributing. You know, this, you can attribute your company. If you're working for someone, but they don't pay you for your time and you don't feel like contributing to them, you can say you're volunteering your own time. You know, this is where you would comment if you wanted to change the summary, and then down to save. And a lot of this metadata is for maintainers. Okay, so that's a core issue. That's a code issue. What I'd like to do now is I would like to go back to my projects, and I want to show you what a community project looks like, because this is another way to give back to Drupal, like speaking at camps, helping mentor, coming up with ideas. There's a lot of different projects. And so I'm just going to use one that I work on as an example. We'll look at that allies talk. These are all the issues that I'm a maintainer of. So chances are you're not going to have this tab, but this is sort of that bookmark section I was talking about. I can quickly go to all of the different things that I work on. So no, maybe we'll look at San Francisco Drupal Users Group. So this is a community project. San Francisco Drupal Users Group, or SFDUG, meets once a month, twice a month now that we're virtual and that geographic barrier is lower. But here's my project page. This is a community page. There's no code involved in this project, but I still want to make sure that people who help me or help on this project get attributed for it. And this page looks very similar to project pages. If this was the meta tag module, this would say meta tag across the top. If it was Drupal, it would say Drupal across the top. This is the same thing. So this is a project page. You can see it's drupal.org/project/ the name of the project. There's a description of what the project is. If you scroll down, you know, you can see who maintains it. Here's some information. If it was a code-based project, you could see when it was released latest. And then on the side, here's a quick link to the issue queue. So say, you know, you want to work on meta tag or you want to work on SFDUG, you would navigate to the project page, and to find their issue queue, you would hit right here and you would click on this open issues. And now you can see it opens up the issue queue specific to SFDUG. Because this is non-code based, this is why I want to highlight it. I want to talk about some of the issues that we've created in here. So we do meet once a month. So I've created issues for each of the meetups that we go to, or that we present. And we'll look at a closed issue so we can see it. This goes back to how anyone can contribute back to Drupal. So we'll just look at Mike Anello presented at SFDUG. He's a Pantheon hero. He presented on the 24th. So I created an issue behind it. And then I attributed people who helped work on it. So Annabella, she helped with marketing and sponsoring and paying for a lot of the events. Mike was a speaker, so I gave him attribution, and then I helped organize it. So you can see, like, there's no code or patches involved here, but we all participated in that issue that month. We all had different parts to play, and it goes back to those community projects, how it takes all of our work, not just code, to create a better project. You know, Mike Anello gave a presentation on Composer. Composer is super important, you know, sharing that knowledge, you know, and having those attributions. So going back to the issue queue, you can see that it's a project. Like I said, I do the monthly meetups, but I also do like call for papers on here. But there's different parts of this. I want to highlight how I run SFDUG. So I've created issues that people can help me with external documentation guides. I want to create an external documentation guide where if someone from like Albuquerque, New Mexico wants to start a new meetup, they can go and look at SFDUG documentation and kind of get an idea of how I set that up. I haven't been actively working on this. It's something I want to do. But this is a good example of a community project documentation that you don't have to know code, but you can give back to. So here, you know, here's my documentation page. I'd like help with it, and I give a link to the page. You know, so really, like I said, I use this as my project management board. You know, let's look at Badcamp. Badcamp's another good example of a community-based project. So if you go into our issue queue, we have meta things. We attribute people for design efforts, you know, for planning, people who work on the website. We attribute our volunteers, you know, there's finance planning, you know, so not only can you have these code-based issues, you can have these community-based issues as well. And I've talked a long time. So does anyone have any questions, like bigger things? Knowing that, you know, in a couple of weeks, we'll look at like the deeper dive on how to triage some of this stuff and how to actually create space for an issue.
I do have one question in the chat from McKenna. Can an issue be assigned to more than one person? You said that to be mindful of assigning yourself an issue if someone else is already working on it.
Right. Okay. So if I go into like as a person who isn't maintaining a project, you can see that in core, I don't maintain that project. So we saw my name and unassigned, and I left it unassigned because it's in core. But let's look at one of these Badcamp issues, just because it's open here. I maintain this project, so it's going to look a little different for me when I hit that metadata. So now when I hit this metadata, here's every maintainer of this project. I can't assign McKenna because she's not a maintainer of the project, but I can say, oh, this is a website front end thing. I'm going to assign Melissa. And then when I hit save, Melissa gets an email that I've assigned her a ticket. So that's sort of the only part where you can assign somebody else, is when they're already a maintainer of that project. And then you don't have the capability of assigning more than one person right now. It's just the one choice.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. But it's good, like I said, like say, you know, you're working on an issue, or you're working in a project and you're reading the README and there's a user interface error, and you go and you create an issue. And we're going to do this in a couple of weeks. You create an issue, but you know exactly how to fix it. and you're going to do it in the next 5 minutes, you would assign yourself that issue and you would make a comment that says, and usually if you assign or unassign yourself or change any of this metadata, you want to be clear in the comment that why you're doing it. So I would say, I'm assigning this issue to Melissa. It's a front end issue. We discussed this in the meeting here, provide any links possible. And then when you hit save, it gives, you can see sometimes we're a little bit lazy in the SFQ where I don't necessarily, oh, I did here. I said John created the files on the session nodes. So when I attributed John, people understood why I did that, and then I attributed myself because I uploaded the transcript files, so just be clear, as you change issues and as you attribute people, that way when people go into the issue queue, they can kind of like see that workflow, much like your tickets at work. So.
Okay, that's actually really, really helpful. Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you can see like we've been a little bit lazy, like we could have gone in here and like struck some stuff, but you find the community queues are a little bit more laserdaxical than core is not like this, it's really defined, but that's why like sometimes working in these in the contributed or in the community queues is a little bit easier at first because it's not so rigid.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, like you said, too, people are donating a lot of their time, and I'm sure they're probably working a lot of different issues at one time. So it kind of makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But again, on the 15th, we're going to do the how to create an issue where we'll talk about, instead of just looking at issues that already exist, we'll kind of like really hone in on, that summary and what all the different parts mean. And then we'll actually take a look and we'll triage some issues because there's some issues in the queue that are old or outdated or need some steps to replicate. So as a novice contributor, sometimes triaging issues is a good first step too, is going through and making sure they're still relevant. Are they assigned the right way? And there's a project and a documentation on page on how to triage issues. And that's a really good step into the issue queue too, as a non-coder. And that helps other people. Like we're going to do a triaging issues next week before DrupalCon. That way we're going to do a new first-time contributor workshop, and we're going to triage a whole bunch of issues as novice and then make sure that there's really good steps to replicate. That way a novice can go in there and understand the issue at once and have some issues to choose from. And that's the part that's nice about triaging issues too, is I know Bad Camp is coming up. I'll triage a bunch of issues, that are relevant to the initiatives that we're going to work on. And that way, when people come to Contrib Day, they can type Bad Camp as that tag, and they'll have like some predefined issues to work on. It kind of solves that problem of what should I work on.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a really good approach too. I know I'll be at DrupalCon. I'm actually delivering a session with Tara, my first time, so it'll be exciting. But I'm also planning on joining on the contributor day on Friday, so that's really helpful to know that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing I want to say is I can't stress enough to be honest and transparent when you're a newbie, or not a newbie, but a novice in the queue. It really goes a long way, and people really extend that helping hand, not that they don't normally, but they give you that extra help that you need. And then people will see that you're a novice, and they might point you to documentation that they might not give to somebody else, and kind of, help you with that bumper car of like finding things to finding solutions, rather than just telling you what the solution is. They might help you find the solution, teach you to fish versus giving you the fish. But I like to say too, like when I work on an issue, I'm at a first time contributor workshop, I'm mentoring people, I'm creating this novice issue that we're going to work on right now. And that gives some transparency to the maintainers too, that some novices are working on it and it might take a little bit longer, but we want to like really keep that issue for beginners, and that way we can take it from, like, if it's a longer issue, take it from camp to camp, and the mentors kind of have that a history with an issue too. Like
yeah, I think that's really great. I love how you really explained this and broke it down, because I feel like, I'm blessed enough that I work here at Pantheon, and I have so many like mentors that I can turn to for like, doing my first issue. But for people that don't, this is an incredibly helpful little training here, because there's so many things that I learned that you know, even being here after a year, I barely skimmed the surface on. So this has been really, really helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part of giving back to Drupal is like helping others give back to Drupal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a rewarding feeling for sure. I think that's all the questions I had, but I'm definitely excited for the training on the 15th.
Good. And we'll do like, I think, depending on how many people are there, we might do it like a round robin too, where each person kind of puts in a little piece of it. You know, I'll find an issue that, you know, one of us can like write the title, and then one of us can write the summary, and then someone else can tag it. And that way everyone can kind of contribute to the process a little bit and get that muscle memory.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I'm definitely more of a hands-on learner. So selfishly, if it's a small group, I would love that.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for your time today, Amy June. This has been incredibly helpful to me. I've been introduced to the issue queue before, but this is so much more information for me to actually be able to act on all the stuff that I already thought I knew. And stuff that I thought I knew and actually did not.
It's a little bit of a fire hose. Like I like to just say to do that like bumper car approach, like just from one issue to the next, and just kind of, you never know where you're going to end up, which is kind of nice. And that's kind of the best way to learn sometimes. Like when you're discovering new music on Google, you know, and you just do like, oh, I'll pick what's next, you know, and I think that's a good way to look at the issue queue too.
And you had mentioned a couple of times that we've got a couple more webinars coming up. On Monday the 7th, we have 2 WordPress themed webinars for WordPress community contributions at 12 p.m. Pacific, and then WordPress Track Q101 at 2 p.m. Pacific. And then we've mentioned a couple of times on the 15th, we have a how to create and triage issues. CMS agnostic, come explore, learn, participate. And that is at 8 a.m. Pacific. And then also on the 15th at 11 a.m. Pacific, we have Drupal documentation. Once again, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming. Thank you for watching the recording. All of this information and Amy June's notes and slides will be available on the Pantheon community forum. And also sometime soon in the Pantheon documentation for longevity. Thanks so much.
That's something everyone can contribute to too. So.
It's true. I've got a post in the forum about it.
Okay, thank you.
Love it.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Amy June.
Thank you.